Welcome to this episode of the Insurance Brokers Podcast. On today's episode, we're delighted to be speaking to Justine Dignam. Justine is responsible for driving the development, growth and management of tax incentives and relief division of Markel Tax. Justine joined Markel in 2014, and during her time, she's been responsible for leading the strategy and development of introducing tax incentives and reliefs to accountancy partners. In addition, she's been responsible for developing and taking to market different sector propositions, combining products and services from across the UK businesses, including insurance, tax and law. In her previous role as marketing director for the UK, Justine developed partner strategies to ensure long-term engagement with intermediaries and distribution partners. Previously, Justine worked within the professional service and accountancy sector in senior positions and at partner level for many years, also acting as a non-exec director for a number of professional service firms in the UK. Welcome, Justine. Good afternoon, Justine. Thank you so much for coming on the Insurance Brokers Podcast. I'm really excited to have you here, not just because of what you can tell the listeners, but also I have a personal or business interest in what you're about to tell us. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you for having me. Most welcome.
Should we start perhaps with a little bit of background, because R&D Tax Relief and how that relates to insurance brokers and indeed their clients is perhaps something of a misunderstood concept. So would it be really good if you could give me a bit of background about who you are and what you do at Markel?
Sure. So as you quite rightly said, my name is Justine Dignam. I'm Director of Tax Incentives and Reliefs at Markel. So we have a specialist team of just under 30 people who just solely specialise in niche tax services. So we have a group of people who are chartered tax accountants, qualified accountants, tax technicians, technologists, scientists, engineers and PhD qualified specialists who have real sector expertise. So as I say, we've specialised in this really niche area of tax for the last 15 years. And to do that, we partner with over 2,500 accountants businesses in the UK, and we act as their outsourced tax partner. So an area of tax that they wouldn't necessarily fall upon on a daily basis, we can assist and offer their clients that real niche advice. The analogy that I always work with is a little bit like if you've got a heart condition and you went to your GP and said, I really feel that I've got a problem with my heart. You certainly wouldn't expect your GP to say, well, look, hop up on the bed and I'll take a look. You would expect that they would refer you straight away to a cardiologist to give you specialist advice. And that's how we work with our referral partners throughout the UK.
So I think that's really interesting on a number of ways, because the people listening to this podcast are, by default, insurance brokers, and many of them running businesses. Tax for me, and I run several businesses, is one of those things that I go, I've got no idea and probably doesn't apply to me. And I have very recently learned, which has led to our fabulous conversation, that actually it 100% does. And there are real, tangible ways in which insurance brokers and clients of insurance brokers should be looking at this kind of stuff, because it can actually generate quite a lot of you can get a lump sum of cash return, can't you?
Absolutely. So just a little background. So R&D Tax Relief is one of the UK's most generous tax relief. So it's provided by the UK government and it's to support innovation and development in the UK. So it's available to businesses that are subject to corporation tax. So for a business to qualify, it has to be paying or subject to UK corporation tax. So for example, it couldn't be a charity. But it's looking for companies who are seeking to make an advance in scientific or a technological advance. And that tends to be project driven. But when you say that, people obviously think of companies such as Dyson or a pharma company where the level of development is groundbreaking or it's significant. And actually the hurdles really aren't that high. So if you think about the UK market, there's over 6 million what is classified as UK SMEs. Now the classification of an SME is slightly different actually in terms of R&D, but broadly think of 6 million businesses out there. And yet there's only under 60,000 businesses claiming for R&D, which is, clearly a drop in the ocean. And what that means by a significant advance in technology or science is around making something potentially faster, lighter, cheaper, more environmentally friendly. increasing the longevity of, say, a food product or a seed. The main criteria to qualifying for R&D is there's got to be uncertainty around that achievement, so a risk of failure. So if, for example, a business is looking to make an advancement in developing a product that's more durable or more sustainable, if they can go away and think about that over the weekend and then come up with a plan of actually how they're going to be able to do that, and have the knowledge and certainty that that's going to work, then that wouldn't qualify as R&D. There has to be a risk of failure. And indeed, actually, Sarah, if a project does fail, then the qualifying costs can still be claimed back. So that's a significant kind of incentive, if you like, for businesses to really invest in innovation and looking to develop. And in fairness, quite often people think of these as, just an advancement that they're making in terms of that's what we do as our day job. We make these widgets, and there's a commercial goal. We've had to make them faster or cheaper or lighter or made of a different substance to remain commercial.
So can I ask a question? Two questions, in fact. I'm an insurance broker. In fact, no, I'm going to base it on an actual thing. I am an MGA, and I have just developed a bespoke portal which I can sell my products to my broker partners through. And it's not an off-the-shelf portal, and a lot of time and energy has gone into developing that portal, and it is different from what is currently out there. And it's taken me a year in development, and I've put a lot of time and effort in. Can I, as the MGA, go and say, right, I want to do an R&D tax relief on here?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we need a little bit more detail than that, obviously, but fundamentally, if you, and this is quite often the case for R&D claims. So, for example, we work with an insurance company who had a legacy CRM system, but they wanted to develop new technology about a risk analysis tool that would hook into that and would integrate within that CRM system. Now, there was nothing available off the shelf that they could buy that would offer that integration. So they had to employ contractors to actually work on the coding for that, to be able to provide that integration, to be able to produce the reports that they wanted from that legacy system, and working with the analysis tool to actually produce the risk then analysis to be able to online engage. So yes, it's around not being able to take something and being able to integrate it in with something else without having to go through a period of development. And again, going back to that uncertainty, that's really very important, because around that uncertainty is where the R&D kind of development work is incurred.
So there is a huge amount of stuff going on in the insurance market, and there's a massive amount of PE money going into tech-based algorithms and all of this kind of stuff. Presumably, at the very high end, there's a lot of money and a lot of the big boys playing in this area. But at the more SME end, your independent broker, even mid-sized brokers, it's worth having a conversation with somebody like yourself about the innovative things because it doesn't have to be tech-based, does it? It doesn't have to be, you're not developing an app, or if you are pivoting your business because of COVID, for example, and you're starting to do things differently, and you've had to put processes and planning and testing into those, it's worth the conversation. Is that right?
Absolutely. And you should never discount any sector. So, I've worked with recently, we've got a gin distillery that's actually switched their manufacture now to sanitizer. So, and that's had to go through a process of uncertainty how they would be able to change their processes and obviously products. So, and that qualified for R&D. They claimed back £62,000 for that. So, there's lots of things. We work with fashion manufacturers who've changed their different products in terms of different fabrics in terms of non-permeable, breathable fabrics. So there really is no area or no sector that actually probably doesn't do R&D. So it's more around actually, if somebody has had a significant spend on a project where they've had to overcome some technical uncertainties or made advances in processes, then that's definitely worthy of a conversation. And we can ascertain whether somebody's got a valid R&D claim within literally a 10-15 minute telephone conversation,
which I hope to be having with you shortly after this podcast. So I'm an insurance broker, an MGA, an insurer. and I've pivoted. And the quote you just said there was absolutely fabulous in terms of, have I got a big project that's got significant spend in which there's been some uncertainty? If the answer is yes, and you're listening, then speak to Justine, because happy days, potentially. But this is the reason I wanted to talk to you is because I actually think this is much, much wider, or should be much, much wider. Me as an insurance broker, yes, there may be some benefit to me, but even more than that, sort of the world in which we live in now is you need really to provide an all-round business solution to your clients. There's a lot more of this kind of talk coming out, and I'm sure everybody's heard it. So actually, if you are to sit with your client at renewal and talk to them about how they've pivoted during COVID, what projects they've had to undertake to see, you could be in a position to be saying to your client, and you don't need to know that much, do you? I actually think you should have a conversation with somebody like Justine, because you could be due a relatively large tax rebate, which in the current climate, SMEs, the 6 million SMEs you've just spoken about, I don't think there's many that would go, oh, no, not today, thanks. So talk to me a little bit about that. And if you can, you've given some great examples, some more examples about things that have you seen recently happening in this market?
Yeah, so I mean, as I say, the actual amount that you can claim back is actually up to 33 pence in the pound for additional spend. So keeping the maths easy, let's imagine that somebody spent £100,000 on a project of qualifying expenditure. They can claim that 100,000 back in the normal way through their account. But in addition to that, they will be rewarded up to another £33,000, so another 33 pence in every pound that's spent on R&D qualifying activity. Now, of course, there's lots of there's more depth, and I won't go into the merits of the scheme, but that equates to the average claim in the UK being £52,000. Now we can go back to accounting periods. So in essence, a business that's undertaking qualifying expenditure that qualifies on average will be making a claim of £52,000 per year going back 2 years, so would receive potentially a benefit of £104,000. That's not means tested, and that's something that people are entitled to. And given the numbers that we kind of talked about earlier, I'm sure you'll agree, there's a lot of people who aren't claiming their, cash potentially or a tax benefit that they're entitled to.
And for the sake of a 15-minute conversation to ascertain whether you are qualifiable, brand new word there, then why would you not? And I also think that this might be relevant to introduce the fact that you work with partners. You've got accountancy partners, but you work with insurance brokers as partners as well, don't you, in terms of any referrals made from their client base?
Absolutely. So, the broker market is unique in the way that the relationship that brokers will have with their clients, they will have a very good insight into the kind of development work that the clients have been working on, because accountants will always work historically. Whereas, brokers are about the here and now, and they'll be talking to them about the risk of product failure, manufacturing processes, any risk they'll need to cover. So brokers have a really good insight into clients' businesses. And we found that actually, if going through a kind of client review with a broker is really fruitful, because they understand their clients and they have a really good kind of depth of knowledge around their client's business and their operations. What's also worthy of note, Sarah, that I didn't say actually, is if a company is loss making, they can also make a claim. So they can either surrender the loss for a cash payment from the revenue, or they can carry those losses forward. So quite often for kind of techie businesses or pharma businesses, a lot of these businesses won't make money for a number of years when they first start off, but they will be investing and putting money into R&D projects. So they don't lose that money in there. They can claim that back.
And I think on that note, and you did touch on it earlier, but I think it's probably quite important to highlight, if the project fails, if you put £100,000 into a project that does not work, you can still claim R&D tax relief. Is that right?
You can indeed. So you would either decide to carry the losses forward, or you could surrender that loss and you would receive a cash payment from the revenue. It works out at 14.5% in the pound. So it's not as generous if you surrender for a loss as it would be for other SME profit-making businesses, but it's still there. And again, businesses often decide that they'd like to have that cash today.
Absolutely. And so obviously I've spoken to a few people about this type of possible tax relief. How many claims do you guys do a year? This is obviously presumably quite a big element of Markel's. I think you said there's 30 people in your team, so it's, a decent chunk of what you guys do.
Yeah. So on average, we claim around 750 claims. We submit around 750 claims a year to the revenue, and on average, we save UK businesses over £40 million each year. So it's a significant saving into the business, but there is, as I say, a massive market that aren't yet to claim their R&D tax relief.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do a bit of a live demo for people, right? And let's use as an example. So Boston Telus, we are a marketing and management consultancy, and we do the full sort of marketing arm for insurance brokers, and we do it in quite a unique way. We are, off the back of some of the work we did with the CII last year, we are in the process of developing company number 2 called Coffee, Calm and Connection. It's around mental health and professional services, and it is scenario-based learning. It's podcasting. It's an app that delivers psychoeducation in 5-minute boosts, which is learning from scenarios which are in the podcasts. There is nothing out there at the moment that does this. It's very different from Headspace. It's very different from Calm. And there is nothing that is to this target market or that delivers it in the way that we are delivering it. And we are doing the coding. We've got a team of people that are building the back-end functionality in bespoke coding. And we've got a team that are developing the user journey, the user interface, and the app. Mm-hmm. Does that fit this kind of idea?
Yeah, so the questions I would be asking you are around technical uncertainty. So what has been the technical uncertainty, and what have been the challenges that you've had to overcome? And secondly, how have you overcome those challenges? So instantly, if somebody's going to develop an app or they're going to develop some sort of software, they would automatically go to the market. Is that technology readily available off the shelf, or is it readily available through open source coding, for example, where you'd be able to go to the market and ask somebody how they'd be able to develop that? Have they developed that functionality, and how can you integrate into that? If that technology isn't readily available in the market, it would be around asking a competent professional. I'm sure you went to somebody who was competent in that field to ask them if they knew how they were able to do this, or whether this technology was readily available. And then if not, we would be talking about what was the technological uncertainty and how were you able to resolve that.
And if we took it away from technological uncertainty, the project uncertainty, and I can't answer some of the questions because we're still in the development build. We haven't got a live product yet, but it's coming. Some of the sort of project uncertainty is about the actual clinical psychoeducation that's being developed in the way it's being developed. Who we're speaking to, how we take that and deliver it, whether it's through video, info bites, Q&A, all of that kind of stuff is work in progress. So it's away from technical. How does that fit this kind of idea?
Yeah, so to qualify, there are 5 types of qualifying costs that are qualifying expenditure. So there's staffing costs. So the cost of people who are employed in the project, and what percentage of their time they're spending on working on the R&D project. There's subcontractor costs. So quite often people will subcontract that work out to people. Like you say, you've got a web or a software development company. So those costs are capped at 65%. But again, we kind of need to go into more detail. There is also externally provided workers, so staff that are provided by agencies, etc. We can claim, again, that's capped at 65%. Software licenses we can claim for. So that wouldn't be the likes of Microsoft Office. This is more like CAD or specific R&D related, project related software that you'd use. And then heat, light and power. And again, we would allocate a proportion of that. So there's a lot more kind of complexity to go into to kind of ascertain what the claim is and whether you can, it qualifies. But things like marketing costs, you can't claim for. You are not able to claim for mathematical calculations. So there's a real kind of complex structure around that, what you can and what you can't claim for. So we'd have to go into a kind of technical meeting to be able to ascertain that. But what the important thing is to make sure you're not missing out on making a claim. So in that 10 to 15 minute call, we would be able to kind of give you, yes, there is qualifying expenditure there, and you would be able to qualify for a claim. It's then down to us to tease out that information.
And it goes back to the cardiologist, not the GP. So as the insurance broker or as the SME, all you need to know is that a 15-minute conversation or an introduction to you for a 15-minute conversation could yield some fairly interesting cash payments.
Absolutely. And, we do that on a day-to-day basis. People are always, kind of astonished about, is it really okay to make that claim? There's lots of reasons why people don't, people almost feel if it's too good to be true, then they shouldn't be making the claim. But, this is our area of expertise. We've been doing these claims for over 15 years. We work very closely with the revenue. We're on the HMRC consultative committee. We developed our processes and our reports in line with the expectations from the revenue. We have a very good relationship with them. And in the unlikely event that we do have an inquiry from the revenue or they ask us further questions, then we will defend any claims that we make without incurring further fees. We work on a contingency basis anyway. So, people aren't charged unless they receive the tax benefit. And it's just a percentage of the tax benefit. So it really is kind of the key thing is to find out that you're not missing out on a valid R&D claim, and then we can go through the process with you. But that's our job. We certainly don't want to make it difficult for either referral partners or indeed the end client. We're there to hold the client's hand through that process and make sure that we tease out the correct information and that we build a really robust report that's submitted to the revenue.
So if I was an insurance broker listening to this and I wanted to talk to you about being a referral partner, what are my next steps? What do I have to do?
Yeah, so please, get in touch. So my contact details will be available at the end of this podcast. But please get in touch. We then sign an engagement letter as a referral partner. We then offer full training for the team. We offer white label marketing support and articles, case studies, thought leadership pieces that you can utilise and send out to clients, use on the web. We undertake a client review with you to talk through your client base and actually identify opportunities. And we'll also teach you as a business to identify opportunities. We provide things like an opportunity checklist so that when people are meeting with clients, they can actually just run through a simple few questions to ascertain whether it's likely that they may have an R&D claim that's to claim.
And there is a sort of a percentage of your income from this that then goes to your partners. Is that right?
That's correct. So typically we would charge 20% of the tax benefit to the end client, and of that we would pay away a percentage of that to the introducer, to the referral partner.
I think it's an absolute no-brainer, and I shall make sure, if you're happy, all of your contact details are in the show notes for this episode. And I think if anybody listening has got any questions, please feel free to come to Justine or me, and I'll refer you to Justine to ask any questions, because I think this is a massively underutilized area. I think it's obviously aimed at benefiting those companies that are trying to grow and pivot and be there for a number of years. So absolutely, anybody listening, please jump on all over this. Thank you very much, Justine.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me.